Words to that effect. Hi everybody, my name is Levi Clay, and today I am going to bring you a very cool lesson, a fun lesson, something that's going to help spice your blues playing up, as you just heard in that intro. So that wasn't your traditional 12-bar blues. I'd added in an additional change. Now, a big part of learning to play over chord changes is learning different chords and different chord progressions. So this is a perfect example of something to help you take your playing over changes skills to the next level. For me, a huge grounding for playing over changes was the blues. Learning to play over a simple 12-bar blues in the key of A. You have an A7 chord, a D7 chord, and an E7 chord. So if you can play all of those sounds, A7, D7, and your E7 to your D7, you can play over a 12-bar blues. Now, I found that adding additional changes and substitutions to that was a great way to help spice things up, adding 2-5-1s and the like. But what we're going to talk about today, more specifically, is the backdoor progression. So this is a relatively common movement in jazz chord progressions. You will hear this, and it comes from the concept of a cadence. So what we know a cadence to be is a moment of rest in music, musical punctuation, if you like. And the most common cadence that we deal with in music is the perfect cadence, chord 5 going to chord 1. If I play a 1-4-5, A, D, E, that E chord naturally, chord 5, helps pull us back to 1. And what you'll often hear people do is they will make, obviously, chord 5 a dominant chord instead of E. We'd have E7, which really helps to pull you back to. It doesn't matter how you play that E7, it's always going to help pull you back to chord 1. So 5-1 is a very, very common resolution in music. The backdoor progression, essentially, as the name would suggest, is a slightly different way to bring us back to chord 1. So instead of going the more traditional 5-1, we come in via the back door. So in more specifically in this context, that backdoor movement is resolving via the flat 7. So if you're moving to A, we would move into that via the flat 7, so in this case G7. So instead of E7 being our dominant chord, we're using G7 as our dominant. And when I voice them like that, E7, and here's my G7, you can already hear that there's a lot of similarity between those two chords, right? In our E7, we've got the notes E, G sharp, B, and D. Well, in our G7 chord, we've also got those B and D notes, but instead we've got a G, a B, a D, and an F. So still keeping some common tone. So it has that feeling of that 5-1 resolution. If you look at the inner voices, these two notes in our G7 would resolve down to the notes of an A7 chord. Now, we don't just put that chord in there though. What we're actually including as well is the 4 minor. So this is very common in pop music as well. When you play you could play a 1 chord. Some people refer to this as like the Radiohead chord progression. So you might have an A chord, going to the 4 chord, D, then the 4 chord minor. And that feeling of that 4 minor, again, helps to pull us back to a 1 chord. So we are going to literally play our 12-bar blues, but anytime we would play the 4, we are, instead of playing D7, we're going to play D minor to G7, which will help bring us back to our 1 chord, A7. So if I'll play, you know what I'll do? I'll play a 12-bar blues, standard 4-chord strumming type thing with the standard changes and call them out as I do it. So chord 1. Now we go to chord 4. To the 1. Chord 5. the 4. That'd be your standard 12-bar blues progression. So I'm going to do that same chord progression, but as I say, in place of that D minor, well, actually the second half of the D minor, I'm going to play D minor to G7. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So it already sounds like we're playing a variation on a blues. It's got some spice, there's some jazz to this. Now you can use that concept and apply essentially any blues extensions that you would normally add to your blues playing. So it doesn't need to be those straight chords, it doesn't even need to be those straight rhythms. I might play 3, 4. Do whatever you want here. It's about experimenting, right, and getting comfortable with where those chords live. Now what I'm going to do now is help you practice your voice leading of that particular movement. Really what we're dealing with is D minor, G and A. So as a way of practicing, you're just really looking for voice leading those particular movements, right? So find a D minor, voice lead it to G, and then voice lead that to A. So if I take D minor here, that'd be 5, 3 and 2 on the D, G and B strings, sorry, A, D and G strings. Root 3rd and 5th of my D minor chord. Now if I want to take that to G, I might play, or I could make it a G7 and then resolve that to my A. Now just playing each of those notes, D, F and A, and then my G7 would be D, F and B, and then my A would be C sharp, E and A. It sounds like that movement. So I'm forcing myself to play that particular movement in any way possible. If I play D minor here, I can play my G, resolving to A. And no matter where I go, so I'll play around with that and just endlessly look for ways to play D minor, moving to G7 and then moving to A. The more you do that, the more you're going to drill the sound of the chord progression into your head. So that's kind of your first step in learning to be able to use this. Now we're getting a little bit more advanced for anyone that is still watching. Now my next step for this would be arpeggios, right? can I play these arpeggio sounds? D minor, triad. G7. Resolving to A. Again, D minor. G. A. D minor. G7. A. Now you can play around that endlessly, but the goal, of course, is to have it in time. So forcing myself to play in one area, here for example, D minor. In fact, you know, I'm just going to follow the chord shape. D minor, G7, and then A7. So my D minor would be my G, and then A would be the same but a tone higher. So can I put that in a blues? That sounded quite cool to me. Can't resolve to the F sharp, that doesn't work. Need to resolve to the E. That's a great line, right? That really sounds like I'm playing over those changes, because I am. I'm outlining the chord changes very neatly. I'm just playing endlessly there. And I would, in a practice session, that's how I would go about practicing. I would do that over and over and over, just trying to loop the chords and, you know, test myself. Can I hear the chord changes? If the answer is yes, then I'm doing well. I'll be embarrassed to go back and watch that, because I'm sure when I'm doing that, I'm pulling all of these weird faces, but it's because I'm trying to listen and I'm trying to think and hear things and play those things. So that would be kind of step 2. Can you deal with the arpeggios? And then finally, probably the most important step is looking at scales, right? So scales, scales, scales. What is the fuller harmony here? Now, I would recommend Don Mock's Mastering the Dominant Chord book to really get your head around this as a concept. But what I'm aiming to do is understand what I'm playing, the key of what I'm playing, in relation to the key that I was in. So what do I mean by that? Well, in the context of a blues, I'm playing on an A7, right? So like a mixolydian. Those types of things, right? Mixolydian in nature. Now, when I superimpose these new changes in there, I have to not just play. It would be worthless me just playing it as though I was in the key of C, which is where these chords come from. I want to play in my key of C, but I want to make it relevant to where I was, if that makes sense. And I appreciate that doesn't make sense, but I'll show you what I mean. So what I'm looking at is I'm looking at my D minor triad. I'm looking at the notes that are in that, D, F, and A, And I'm asking myself, well, how do they impact the scale that I was playing, so Mixolydian? Now, the reason I'm just doing these notes is because these are the chord tones, these are the strong tones. So if I take my A Mixolydian and look at that and say, well, that has an F sharp in it, and the D minor triad has an F natural in there, all of the other notes fit. So if I look at that and say, well, what would that be? F sharp is the sixth. If I lower the sixth, oh, okay, that's Mixolydian flat six. If I want to look at it from the A, or if I want to look at it from the D, it's D melodic minor. So D melodic minor is going to fit over this D minor triad. Sound great over that. And because the G is actually the same, it's the same key, it's still going to be D melodic minor. But if you want to be more specific, you're fitting from the notes that we were in, that'd be G Lydian dominant. So yeah, it's D melodic minor to G Lydian dominant, and then resolving back to our Mixolydian. Or if you want to think of it all from the key center of A, it would be Mixolydian flat six, Mixolydian flat six, Mixolydian. And that will work if I play that was a nice jam, but it was ruined by my dogs, as usual. So let me just cut another one in. So Mixolydian, moving to Mixolydian flat six. You're kind of going to hear the changes. This isn't my preferred way to improvise because I'm not really implying the changes as tightly as I would if you were using arpeggios, but you'd have this, right? It's not quite what I prefer, but mixing those two concepts together is really where things are at. When I'm improvising on something like this, I'm thinking D minor, but I can connect the notes of D minor with the scale, which would be melodic minor. And when I change to my G7, again, I can mix G7 with the relevant scale. So what I'm going to do now, just to close things up, is I'm going to play, put the pick down, and I'm going to play that 12-bar blues chord progression for you again. I'll play the progression as chords, and then I'll outline those changes improvising. Let's try that one again, not ruined by the dogs again. I should really do something about them, right? 3, 4. some alright notes in there, some not so alright notes, but I guess that's the joy of improvisation, right? There's no going back and fixing these things. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that, and if you did, please do leave me a comment below. Any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, ideas, I'm always happy to give you feedback and help you in any way that I can help you, because you help me to become a better YouTuber. Anyway, so I'm going to click this button now and say a big thank you to these people over here, some of my supporters over on patreon.com. They keep these videos coming to you, so thank you very much for your support, guys. Yeah, it's nice to be able to take some time out of doing all of the transcribing to be able to make YouTube videos and not feel like, my family are starving because of this passion that I have. But yes, as long as you guys are getting something out of it, I'm going to keep making YouTube videos. And you know what? Even if you're not getting anything out of it, I'm going to keep making YouTube videos because I make YouTube videos because I love making YouTube videos. So yes, on the note of YouTube videos, you can check out 2 more of my YouTube videos here and here. Of course, you can check me out on Patreon by clicking this button up here, and you can subscribe by clicking that button down there. Thanks so much for all the support, guys, and I will see you for another video or lesson sometime soon. Laters.